All right. Well, now that you are both sitting towards the end of year 2 from Rhodes House, this is an opportunity for you to sort of share what you've learned over the course of your time in Oxford and any additional reflections back. Hindsight being 2020 in terms of how you might have handled things or done things. What are the things that you're glad you did? What are the things that you might have done differently? And I will just add up front, given the changes that are happening in the US, I think particularly, William, other non-US nationals are looking more seriously about graduate options in Europe. We're certainly hearing that in our office, and it's also, I mean, Inside Higher Ed ran an article that there is a tremendous spike among US nationals in considering graduate study overseas. Okay, we are gaining folks. So now that we have other folks popping on, let me warn them. Everyone who is joining, I just want you to know that I am recording this session. So you are welcome to turn your cameras on. Of course, if you do not, you won't appear. But I want you to know that we're recording, so that's part of your choice in your participation. And so I know even of the 2 folks that I have already seen join, that we cross the international student, domestic student divide, if you will, in terms of the Rhodes process. So I think, William and Irina, also, if you can reflect on whatever you consider to be the parts of your experience that might have differed across being a U.S. Rhodes Scholar versus being a Rhodes Scholar from non-U.S. constituencies. And then if those of you who are students who have logged on and are on screen want to introduce yourselves so that Irina and William know a bit about who they are addressing, that is most welcome too. So at the moment, Mia, you are the one with your camera on. So if you don't mind explaining briefly your year and prospective Rhodes constituency.
Awesome. I can go ahead and quickly introduce myself. So I'm Mia. I am a junior studying economics and international studies. I will be applying for the New Zealand constituency as an international student. And right now I'm currently looking at applying for a second BA in law with a particular focus on international human rights law and migrant claims.
Which means that your application process will be more like Williams, but your academic interests are more like Irina's. So that's why it's useful to get the introductions. But William, why don't you, if you don't mind, go first to sort of give the framing of what your application process was like, particularly since we have someone who's also negotiating what it looks like when you're applying through a non-US constituency, but are at Northwestern.
Hey, hi everyone. My name is William. So I got Rhodes in 2023. I'm from Uganda, and I do a PhD in data science, by the way. So that's my process for Rhodes was mostly, I feel like there's a general kind of similarities between all the constituencies, which is like you do the same essay, I guess, like it's the same essay for everyone, like you have essay, you have your academic statement, and then referrals, reference letters. Where did the differences really come in? I guess like in the interview style, I think this is where like it becomes more apparent that there are differences, because like when I asked all the Americans how their interviews were, and it was like it seemed like way more intense and way more not combative, but like I guess like some people like said it was very like uh I don't know. I really could speak more of this, but like the general vibe of it was like it was more aggressive, and mine was more they're just more trying to figure out like what I had to why I wanted to do this in the first place. They were interested in like really me as a person. I guess like what are my ambitions outside like academia, and I think every constituency kind of has its own thing that they look for, really. Um, so it really differs. Like I would say like the one key thing is that like the interview process changes quite a bit. But like in the essay stage, I guess it's more about I guess that's where it's more common to like kind of just talk about what your academic interests are, what do you want, why you want to come to Oxford. Uh yeah, you just like have to sell one story. Like the thing of like just heard from almost everyone is like just selling a story. You gotta have a very consistent like story that you can defend like from the writing to like them actually getting to talk to you in person because if it needs to kind of like all make sense in the whole picture, especially when you have to like sell them on like what you want to do after you like come to Oxford, especially. Um, yeah, that's what I would say about it.
Yeah, I'll echo that for sure. So I studied also economics and international studies at Northwestern. Um, and I always knew I wanted to go to law school and didn't want to go straight through. And so I was kind of looking for something to do in between. And Rhodes is a very nice in between thing to do. Um, I echo what William said about like selling a story. I like remember when I was doing the application, I like wrote down like I essentially had my transcript. I had a list of like every like extracurricular or like volunteer or work experience that I had engaged in. And then like I made a list of like my personal qualities and I was like, what's like the narrative that links these things? That's not to say that every single thing you do has to be in service of your one narrative, but it very much helps if most of the things on your resume and like a good bit of like classes on your transcript like work to tell the same story. Um, and then I think I also will echo what William said about what you're going to do after Oxford, making up an important part of that. I guess the road selection process is quite different among constituencies, but I think the one thing that they have in common is that they're selecting for potential. And so if you're able to tell the story of like why you have potential, what you want to do with that potential, um, in like a pretty convincing and grounded and specific way, that I think you increase your chances quite a bit.
So to just sort of nudge along, one of the things I remember talking to the two of you about when I was over there last year is how the Rhodes cohort sort of operates as a whole, and because of the disproportionate number of US Rhodes scholars in that pool, how that kind of plays out. And so I think particularly since we do have Mia on the call, who, if everything goes to plan, would be there as a, New Zealand scholar, how each of you has experienced what your relationship to the Rhodes community is versus your academic sort of cohort, and then your college cohorts, because even as we cross over to other folks on the call, understanding those sort of centers and what that Venn diagram looks like, around you is something that I think most folks do not fully understand until they get to
Um, I mean, I can just at least tell you that like the people from New Zealand and Australia are quite tight. So like there's a lot of people. So there's I would say you wouldn't really struggle or want for community in that sense because people are like there's lots of people that you would find and also inside roads and outside roads as well. Um, I guess like also like something that happened for me is that they always say that there's like three choices you make if you get the scholarship. You either like you choose like your college or you choose your department or you choose like college, department, or Rhodes, and you can't like have all three essentially. And what that means is that like you will have mass opportunity to just like meet people, uh, different people, similar people, like in any of these spaces. So it hasn't really been that hard to find community here because there's so many people who are like interested in similar things and like just yeah, it's quite varied. So I would say I wouldn't want for community like you would not struggle is what I'm saying.
Yeah, William had like 50 people at his birthday party. From a bit more of a technical perspective, like what do each of those divisions mean? Um, Rhodes is like kind of like a window in the background that you always have open where like there's like consistent programming throughout the year, either like centered around holidays or just like regular opportunities to meet and mingle is what they're called. And there's always like support in the form of the Rhodes Trust staff if you choose to access it. The all of your like academic work happens through your department. So you take classes at your department. Your advisor is located within your department. And yeah, essentially like everything academic happens through that. And then college is also a great opportunity to make friends. So college handles your housing. If your dining hall is also through your college. And then there's like regular social events that are run by something called the Middle Common Room, which is like an organization, uh, a board of grad students that puts on events within your college. Which is not to say that you cannot like make friends cross college, but it's very, very easy and quite facilitated to make friends within your college.
What do you guys wish you had known before you arrived? Like, what was the thing that surpassed your expectations, and what's the thing that you wish you had known and might have done differently before you came to sort of improve your experience?
This is not a direct answer to the question, and maybe William can provide a more direct answer. But I think people think a lot about Rhodes and less about the academic portion of it. Rhodes isn't just like a scholarship or an award. It's like you then have to go to Oxford and study. And like have to, obviously, is not the right word. You get the opportunity to come to Oxford and study. But it's quite telling that at least among the Americans, about half of people do not end up in the degree that they said that they would do on their Rhodes application. And whether that's a question of the other degree fit better with the narrative that I was crafting, or I just didn't know much about it before I got Rhodes, I don't know. But Oxford is like quite, I would say, quite different than American universities, and maybe this is a experience that's idiosyncratic to my department, but you don't get much choice in terms of like what your degree looks like. Like mostly everyone takes the same set of classes, and if there is choice, it's within like you can choose to like specialize in a certain research method, or maybe there's like a topical option course. But the like build your own degree that you kind of get at Northwestern is not the case at Oxford. And it is also difficult to like audit classes. Um, or I would also say to learn a language at Oxford, all of those things. Um, Essentially, you're coming here to specialize in a like certain discipline. Also, the contact hours, so the amount of time you're getting with an instructor, varies very much among courses. And the quality of supervision, I would say, is quite random even within a course. So there are people who like really vibe with their supervisor and get like regular meetings and support and feedback from them. And there's people who getting feedback from their supervisors like pulling teeth. So I think like apart from thinking about Rhodes, like you should think about the academics, like does this serve like my intellectual and professional needs. And then also do some like very in-depth research about the courses that you're applying to. Um, and I would say solicit opinions from the students that are currently in them if that's possible.
Yeah. I mean, I second that. Let me see. I would say, like, from my perspective, it's very practical. It's like my living situation. I wish I had known that, like when I picked the college, like the accommodation I was going to be living in, which was provided by my college, it was like a bit further out than I thought. Uh, so it became like, so we kind of like stayed next to each other, but like I knew it was more closer to our college and literally just closer to the town, and I was like way further back, maybe like 10-20 minutes away, and that like really added onto like my journey because I was like having to go like a lot to my department and spending all my days there because I was doing a master's that was so intense. So probably if you get your offer, when you get your offer from your college and they hopefully give you housing, or when you apply for housing, I would say like either try to stay on site or try to look for a place that's like closer to where you're going to be. That's the second thing. I wish I just knew people were a bit more chill. Like we're actually quite chill here. This was like my biggest like surprise. I came expecting the worst, and indeed there were some of the worst here. But then I just found like most people are like quite chill. So yeah.
Can you define what that meant to you? I'm curious what your stereotype was that you were concerned about that some people live down to, but most avoid it.
I just thought like like I'd be surrounded by wannabe politicians, right? Like so at the sort. And you do run into those types, but like it's more people are like quite chill. Especially like Rhodes is surprisingly I was surprised by how like actually like people were like we have nothing to prove to each other. Like everyone's like super like relaxed, I would say, which is like it's a nice healthy environment. Though I do know some courses are not like that. Like so like Rhodes, yes, but then like some departments and some degrees, it's like a bit like um, yeah, like everyone's like your competition and everything. So I don't know. That's like something you can't really vibe check until you're here. So
I'll second on the chill where like I think for at least for me, Oxford has been like quite a period of relaxation where like I guess from an American perspective, like Rhodes on a resume helps with like the law school application process. And so when I got to Oxford, I was like, I don't really have much to prove. And I'd already taken my LSAT. And so it was a time for me to like rediscover like these are my like academic interests. These are like my interests outside of academics. This is what I like doing and this is what I do for myself versus like this is what I do for a resume or what I do for money. Um and it also was a time to like actually like hang out with people, which I did not do much of in undergrad, unfortunately.
What's changed like about the way you've thought about the way you think about your futures now, if at all? Maybe they haven't, but in terms of like what are your takeaways when you do think about next steps versus when you set foot there a year and a half ago, really is.
I would say less so Rhodes and more the US political situation has changed my thoughts about my future. When I applied, I was like, I am going to work for the federal government as an attorney. I might have to put those plans on the shelf for a few years. Um, but also, and I've talked to a lot of Rhodes people about this. People come to the UK and then a lot of them either think about or actually end up staying. And I definitely thought about staying. But I think that's something that just like to keep in mind that like you get attached to the place, and you end up liking it like far more than you thought, and it becomes, I guess, in people's minds less of a temporary thing and more of like a place that you could see yourself like truly living and thriving. But I fully like never thought that that would even be a possibility that I would consider.
I guess for me, like what's changed is, I mean, I decided to do a PhD. I was doing a master's and then I locked into a PhD. So I kind of like long-term seeing myself here, which is working out in some ways. I guess also, yeah, like really just like kind of like feeling at home here is something that is a feeling that is coming to me. Like Oxford is pretty nice. Probably when I get tired of that, might move to London, like a lot of people do, even when they're doing their PhDs. They just like unofficially leave like the city and then commute back a couple of days. So yeah, that's how I'm feeling about this situation. Um, yeah.
So William,
Something
I
else?
want to make
Oh,
sure I'm understanding, because whether or not is someone where, you know, the articles that were written about you when you first won and so forth, you had sort of deep investment in reforms in the electoral system in your home country. And so do you now see yourself as doing any work that you do in that context sort of from a professional birth in the UK, or do you still see the UK as sort of, okay, maybe this is someplace I want to stay in for the rest of my 20s, but relocate later on?
yeah. I'm here. I am thinking of being here for my 20s, and mostly because I think I'll be exiting my 20s by the time I finish this PhD, I think. So should be good to like kind of figure out like professionally where am I gonna go. I hope to have like collaborated with like some people back home as well on different projects and stuff. So yeah, like I'm with ready to go where the wind takes me, but like for now I'm liking it here. I think with the way things are going right now, particularly like in the field I work in, so like do lots of AI stuff. Like the UK is like looking really good right now because like a lot of companies are kind of like based here. So we will see. We'll see where this goes. Because before I wanted to like really come back, I want to come to the States after I finish this PhD. Still might, but we'll see. I'll keep my options open.
Well, both Mia and folks that may not want to turn their camera on, but you can still ask questions in chat or, you know, via your voice without your camera on. What questions do you have for these folks that my curiosity may not have uncovered?
I have a very similar follow-up question for both William and Irina about the experience you guys have had doing grad school in the UK versus pursuing it elsewhere, if that's the US or elsewhere. I'm curious, a lot of the decision making now is very political, but I'm curious, when you guys were applying pre all of this madness, what sort of, I guess, advantages or unique characteristics do you feel that Oxford specifically has given you that maybe you couldn't have had through a master's program in the US had you stayed here, and what that experience meant for you?
I can start. My course has been pretty low on contact hours. Well, that part of the reason is because Oxford runs on 8-week terms, for undergrad and master's, top master's students. And then you have 6 weeks off. Um, and so you have quite a bit of time to yourself. And then even within terms, sometimes you either don't have much class or you don't have any class. So I'm done with class at Oxford. But my degree runs through the end of June. Um, and what that gives you is time to like do your own learning. So that might take the form of like reading books or journal articles, or like for me it's like Foreign Affairs, the magazine. There's always a talk, like every day there's like 20 talks at Oxford. So there's always like something that you are probably interested in running that day. And then also just like talking to like the people in your department, or even people outside of it studying other things, you learn quite a bit. Either about like what they're researching, or like career opportunities or other like academic opportunities for people who are interested in academia. So I will say that's like a major advantage. And I think quite a lot of US grad programs are a little bit more scheduled than that, and you lose some of that. I think you also gain like the benefit of that structure, which is like good feedback and like more instruction. So I think it really is what you prefer. And then also the other major advantage is cheap travel to Europe.
From my end, I'd say like since I did an MSc and a PhD, I guess the master's was quite intense. I'm not gonna lie, that was rough. Like, and not like the MPhils that have 2 years. Like MSCs are very like hands-on. You have 8 weeks of term with assignments and assessments, and then during the 6 weeks of break, you're expected to still work on stuff that actually counts for like the grade, and it's due like the first week of the next term. Um, so it's quite intense, and doing the PhD has been quite chill. It's been a nice change of pace. Research is very collaborative. You can just talk to people. It's really interesting. You can just email people in other departments and like set up meetings and like work on small projects. It's really dependent on like you. It's very individual, I'd say, like compared to like other US programs, which are more structured in the beginning and like middle, like you have like classes and everything. I didn't really have to do classes because I'd done the master's, but even the people who were new to the place, like, and they had to do classes, it was just like one that they did pass fail. So the rest of your time was really spent kind of like trying to do your actual research, which is like a good thing. It's very self-directed and depends on your supervisor as well. I guess something that's like really positioned Oxford for me was like I did not fully understand the social cachet that like Oxford had in the UK because there's so many like people who end up just like wanting to talk to you or interested in what you have to say just because you're here or you might be working on something. So like I was approached for like a quote and my supervisor said like, oh, some journalists wanted to talk to me when the whole DeepSeek paper came out because I was looking at censorship and language models and I was like, oh dang, I have nothing to tell them right now. But like it's just like being handed opportunities to like actually just like meet people and uh yeah, like it's been interesting. Like not of like talking with people like you're able to like through the colleges, like I was able to go to like Cambridge and just like go for an exchange with like my sister college and just like meet a whole other cast of characters who are also probably do the same things. Uh, so yeah, it's I would say like being here is clearly an advantage. I guess why people want to come to Oxford in the UK because it does open quite a few doors for you long term, actually, if you want to stay in the UK, I would say. So
I also forgot this, but I think this is also as William said, like we've had quite different experiences because of the types of masters we were on. But at least for me, there's quite a bit less grade pressure. The only like number grade that I received last year for the entire academic year was one exam that I took in June. Um, and so I think that goes along with like the time aspect in like terms of like self-learning. Um, yeah. And I know for the second undergraduate degree, it's kind of the same where the third year of exams is what determines your grade.
Thank you, guys.
I think we have a question in the chat, Beth.
Yes, I was just, if you guys can see it, you can dive right in, but I'll in case. So the question is how you guys went about selecting a college when you were going through your placement process.
I have like the silliest reason why I chose my college. And I actually stumbled into quite a good one, so but probably don't replicate mine. There's like a website online that aggregates like a bunch of features of different colleges. And so I checked the one that was like kitchen in accommodation and like free gym membership, under the impression that the gym in Oxford would be like the gym at Northwestern, like an American university gym. It was not. It's one room. And all the machines are very close together. And there's not many of them. But my college is quite nice. Well resourced, I would say. Which is important because your college can subsidize your rent and it can also subsidize your meals in the dining hall. So there are people like I know within the Rhodes community, there's people paying double what other people are paying for rent just because of their college. So that's, I would say, maybe the main factor I would look at is money. In addition to like subsidization, there's also like travel and research grants, grants for like tech, and just like other little pots of money that you can access as a member of that college. Secondly, I would look at like how active like the MCR or social scene is, if that's your thing. Um, I would say that like having an active MCR that hosts lots of events just really um like gives you opportunities to meet people and make new friends, and that's quite nice. Um, William, I don't know if you have any other considerations.
Mm, Definitely the money thing. So like my case is unique because I changed college. Like after I did my PhD, when I got into my PhD, I changed my college, which is like also a big no-no in Rhodes. So like this is like you should know they discourage changing of college. But I was able to do that because I did not pick my college like I initially chose. I didn't get in. So it's like, I don't know if you know like Harry Potter where you do like the sorting hat and like there's no like if you don't like if you apply somewhere they're like we don't like you just get back in the pool and through some mysterious process someone picks you, right? So I was chosen by a college and I really liked it there. Surprisingly, I loved it more than what I had chose before. The only problem was that they were poor, and that this really came to head during like the thesis writing time when my friends were getting their colleges to subsidize them being like getting people to label their data or even just accessing resources like compute or stuff like that, which some colleges do have. Um, so it became like a pain because I luckily had Rhodes to rely on. So Rhodes does have like some research funding you could apply for, but there were even people on Rhodes who were in good colleges that could get from both. So it was like that really became a hassle when it came to actually doing some of my research. Um, so I changed college to uh Keble, and like the reason I chose it was because I wanted accommodation that was like close to the center. I also wanted nice accommodation. Um, Active MCR. I also wanted a college that was a bit more older, but more chill, older but chill. So like the colleges kind of have personality types, and like some have like more of the stuck-up people than others. Like, and I was like, I didn't want to be around people that would not necessarily make me feel as welcome or as comfortable. Like since I come from Uganda, an African bad, like studying here, I wanted to be in a place that I wouldn't feel weird in. So these are my factors when it came to choosing a college, and I chose so well, and I'm loving it here. I basically joined the MCR committee, so like I'm in the student government for this college, so it's going pretty well. I'm actually loving the choice. So I would really check on vibes. Like you don't want to go into like the college that's like with people who you just don't align with. Like because some colleges also have like very strong or subtle political like affiliations, and the kinds of people that get in there kind of reflect that. So yeah, you just look at Reddit and see what people say about the colleges, and then you can like kind of make your choice. It's like a usually good way to do it.
How much, since you only applied to Oxford after you were selected, um, for Rhodes, and I know that the registrar speaks with each Rhodes Scholar about their course choice at that point. How much guidance did Rhodes give you around your collegiate choice? Like, were they putting you in touch with scholars who were already okay?
To be fair,
Zero for me.
we had a handbook. There was a handbook on like on an app that like had all the quick facts about each college and the kind of like vibe that they had, like that was compiled by like some scholars from previous years. So there is that. But the
But
easiest way,
also, it used to be there used to be some colleges that just like, so Marshall and Fulbright have partnerships. Um, I at one point I was told that Rhodes had a sort of special affiliation with St. John's because of its proximity to Rhodes House and all of that stuff. But you guys weren't being directed. Like you didn't have the registrar suggesting, oh, well, based on what I know of you, you might be a really great fit for Maudlin or for Keble or for, Balliol or whatever.
I will say they do have power. So if you like if you get in and you know where you want to go, you can talk to the registrar and like kindly ask her to, nudge this is like info, like if you know, like you can ask her to help nudge you in that
Well,
direction.
that was what I thought. So I was a bit, when you were talking about how you'd ended up,
Yeah, no,
yeah,
they don't tell you this. So like some colleges are very specific about what they want. Some don't like people from Rhodes as well. So like the college I applied to does not necessarily like
right.
Rhodes scholars because
Well, and that's also true of some of the academic programs. So it's like that's where the registrar is sort of aware of that. And so I was just, in your case in particular, William, I had thought
no,
it was interesting to me that you had put in an application to a college without having had the registrar sort of fill it in, because it's very important for me to know as an advisor that I can't assume they're going to default. So like if I'm working with people who are applying for Gates Cambridge, I spend a lot of time talking to them about the Cambridge colleges and how that might intersect with their application process and so forth. But I had always thought in the Rhodes instance that that was happening at the other end, and that I didn't want to say anything that would conflict with what, their sort of matchmaking would be doing.
I
So
don't think there's tech. I think the reason they don't say that is because it's technically like it's like one of those things that they do that's like not it's like a thing they don't necessarily like to advertise that you can do that you could ask, right? So that is why no one really says you could ask that. And I remember when I applied, when I said, I don't even think I said which college I wanted to apply to. I was not really asked about that by like when I got the interview. Sorry, when I was talking when I got in. So this is one of those things that like if you kind of know where you want to go, you should probably bring it up in that first conversation, and then if listen to what they have to say and then be like, okay, could you please, I really really want this place. They would probably not tell you yes, but like saying why you strongly want to go to this college instead of somewhere else would probably help you. uh yeah, they also don't want to like say bad things about other colleges because it makes them feel bad. So yeah, this is probably why they don't actively
well, and
say.
the colleges don't want to have there's also this thing that happens, I think, at both Oxford and Cambridge, and part of it is the not having too many recipients of one particular scholarship. The other part is, and this would be more applicable as a US Rhodes, but potentially also as a New Zealand, an Antipodean Rhodes, is they don't want to end up with an MCR that is disproportionately American or disproportionately, Australian or whatever.
The A word, we don't speak in New Zealand, so
Sure, though, like there are some colleges that are like just dominated by the Rhodes scholars from like certain places. There is like a clear trend, to be fair. Like I think Balliol has like most of the Australians and New Zealand people.
yeah, no,
And
that's
like yeah, there's things like this is what I mean, like the college process is weird, that it seems like they have like some understanding amongst themselves, like with the Rhodes as
it's a
well.
very
So
big brother, little brother relationship.
no one knows everyone.
Yeah. Irene, I had a quick question for you. I was just thinking about when you were saying about your exams, and I was like, there must be such a huge shift from econ at Northwestern. But you were featured in Mark Woody's 311 slides, so he still speaks very highly of you when we were talking about returns to education. So very much still a part of the econ department here. I'm curious about what aspect of your time at Northwestern, whether it was like a freshman or a senior, you feel really carried through into your time applying, and both like as a Rhodes Scholar, are either of you still involved with any of the either organizations or relationship with professors now, and how you feel that sort of supported you throughout the process?
Yeah, well, I think my last, probably the year before I applied was honestly when I accomplished like the bulk of everything that I put on Rhodes. Like I had like a few internships that like featured very like front and center in my resume. I started like a research assistantships. And I like took most of the classes that the professors like wrote my rec whose professors wrote my rec letters. And I will admit I was kind of strategic about the classes I took. Like I would take multiple classes with the same professor because I was like, I want you to write my letter and I want you to have like a depth and breadth of material to pull from when you write it. And then if that wasn't possible, um, I would if it was just a professor I was like taking one class with, I would go to their office hours. I would like engage as deeply as I could with them within the space of like that one quarter. Um, yeah, and then I still work as a research assistant at the Global Poverty Research Lab at Northwestern because I love that job. And I don't know if I'm like even technically allowed to still be working there, but I don't ask too many questions and I've gotten away with it. Um, but yeah, I think the one thing that like I think Northwestern featured very heavily, obviously, in my application process. And then when I got to Oxford, I was like, whoa, this is a completely different style of learning. The switch from econ to international studies also is quite I would say like jarring. It's way more theoretical, way more historical. The research methods are different. The essay styles are different. It's a little embarrassing to admit, when I applied for international relations, I submitted samples, writing samples from econ papers I had written at Northwestern, and the woman like in charge of the applications emailed me and was like, you should consider submitting different writing samples. This is not what we're looking for. And I was like, okay. Um, so I think that's the switch. And I think if you studied law, you would also like go through a different switch. The good thing is that once you write a couple Oxford essays, you kind of get the formula for writing Oxford essays. Um, and like you're at Northwestern, you're smart, you'll adapt.
Mhm. I mean, I'd say on that, like the shift in grading will be jarring. If you're used to seeing those high 90s, rip. It's not like that. To be fair, some people do get that, like, once in a while, but like more often than not. I remember my first essay that I got back, I was like, this can't be happening. What am I looking at right now? Unspeakable grades. Yeah, but then it's actually not that bad. Eventually, when you realize that like they just kind of intentionally become harsh in marking. And like Irina said, you just figure out like what.
Well, as a historian, I will just say it's that Oxford still grades the way you were graded in the US pre-grade inflation. So it used to be in the US too that anything over a 70 was considered great, but now what is considered what's a 70 at Oxford or used to be in the US 2 generations ago is now something north of 90. And I know it's interesting, William, because you having had your education outside of the States, like I always know that's going to hit the Americans really hard. And obviously you went to Northwestern in Doha, which is probably grading more like American institutions. But Mia, you did your secondary education in New Zealand, right? So I suspect this would be less of a shocker possibly for you, but you will have gotten used to the US system where they tell you you're brilliant every 2 weeks and in effusive and overblown terms rather than the sort of, well, you're not half bad.
I'm German on my mother's side, and I grew up in the UK, so I went to primary school there. And I remember it was such a shock because in German schools they have what's called the mistake devil, where if you like make a mistake, you have to sit in the corner and wear the Fehler Teufel hat. And then coming to the US, it was so different. So yeah, I'm not sure if Oxford will have a mistake devil, but I guess European and American styles of schooling are very, very different. So
I'll also just hop in really quickly to say that um like Northwestern professors were like really great for when I was applying to law school. Like, I think at least for my course, it was really hard to like form a relationship with anyone who could write me a rec letter from Oxford. Like my methods professors would teach me for a maximum of 8 weeks. The professors who taught like my core course, which was like the actual international relations content, would teach me for 4 weeks. So they would see me 4 times. Um, and my supervisor was checked out. And so like every single letter that I used for law school or law school scholarships was um from a person that whose relationship like had occurred during Northwestern.
And sorry, Irina, are you applying for law schools in the UK or in the US or both?
In the US.
Okay.
Yeah.
What have you guys seen in your peers in terms of, and this may not be something that's of interest to necessarily the folks that are on this call, but I know it's something that, I get asked a lot. And that is in terms of thinking about employment, sort of either transition back to the States or whatever your country of origin is, or remaining in the UK. One of the other things that potentially functions quite differently is how that kind of career, what career services, career advancement, sort of what the expectations are and how that's handled. And even though I know neither of you is necessarily deep into that at the moment because of your post-grad path, do you have any words of wisdom or insight that you've heard shared through your peers?
I had like, so in my master's, I was studying with people who I was the only one. I think we were only two people that applied to the PhD from the master's. Everyone else was like job hunting from like the first day, and it was very like insane because the course was tough, but like almost everyone was applying to jobs, even on top of like the coursework, because like it seems like in the UK it's very structured when the seasons are you have to apply for things. Like if you want to get into banking, you want to get into like tech, there's like a clear hiring window that you just need to be in the know of. So yeah, I don't really know. Maybe like I've not really talked with career services yet, but like I see like lots of people do talk and they give them like the unofficial like schedule. But I have on the note of like this being a really special place, I have had many friends who have told me that they got leads of jobs by just going to like a bar and then like someone random like works at that company and they're like, oh, you do this, like cool, let me like get your like LinkedIn or something or your number. So it's interesting that you can probably find lots of stuff if you put yourself in the right situation, and there are lots of kind of events happening that are geared towards like people in like uh industries that you might be interested in, so you could run into people there. That's what I would say. You just like find someone who could give you a referral for something. So.
Yeah. I would second what William said. Like consulting, banking, quant timelines are like kind of sick in how early they start. So never assume that it is not currently happening. No matter like if you just started your degree or not. Um, the other thing is that like people do so many things after Rhodes. There's a bit of among the Americans, there's a bit of a stereotype that we all go do law school or med school. And sorry to say I've not escaped that stereotype, but like plenty of people in the cohort have. So I have a friend who like started a nonprofit while he was at Oxford. He does like voter outreach among like the LGBT population in the US. And he next year is going to do a road service year, which is where they pay out your stipend so that you do some public service project, and he's just going to continue running um his nonprofit. There's a girl in my cohort who's gonna intern at the Washington Post because she wants to be a journalist. There's a girl who's gonna go work in like a college access program. And so there's like quite a range of opportunities available to you as a Rhodes Scholar. And like just because a lot of people around you are going to be going to more school after Oxford doesn't necessarily mean that you also should if that's not the right decision for you. I like this is not necessarily just a Rhodes phenomenon, but I meet a lot of people at Oxford or who have studied in the Oxford in the past who are like 4 degrees deep. I'm like, why do you have like an MBA, like an MSc, a PhD, and now you're in law school? Which is like, if they love learning, good for them. But I think at some point, if you're just using school as like a way to delay the decision of like what you're gonna do with your life, then I think you should sit down and like think about like viable career paths. Because I think there is genuinely a point where employers look at you and see you're like 5 degrees and are like, no thanks. Because you do have to pick up some employable skills. And so I would say the summers are like a great time to intern and like um try out I guess a job for a summer and see if you like it. And the last that I have is that Rhodes opens doors. You see this most often in like law and med school admissions, but also the internship I got this summer, I don't think I was qualified for. And confirmed I got it, or at least I got a second look at my resume because it had Rhodes at the top of it. So honestly, and I actually, this is advice that I would say to people who don't have Rhodes either. Like, apply for things you're not qualified for, because half the things I applied for in undergrad before Rhodes, I did not meet explicit selection criteria for. Yeah.
Can you just the person who is continuing with the nonprofit? So one question is the technical one. Are they paying out the additional year for him to run it from Oxford, or are they paying out for him to run it from the US? And then the second is, how is that going to work under the current administration? But that's a different set of questions. And it was part of why I wondered if it was they were going to pay him to stay in the UK, but administer it from
No, he's
a third
gonna run
year.
it for me.
So basically, instead of getting the third year to complete a DPhil, they're willing to pay out the third year to run the nonprofit.
Second or third year, you can do a road service year. So you forego an extra degree to do some kind of public service project. There's a limited number of spots for it. But yeah, that's like an option available to people.
And just because is that an option? So if you're going in the standard thing of 2 years, and let's say you're like William and you do an MSc, that's 1 year in the first year, could William have, rather than continuing to the DPhil, spent year 2 on a service year?
Yes.
Interesting.
But I think it's like, I think I don't necessarily think the service year is discouraged, but I think it is very, very strongly encouraged for people to stay in Oxford for 2 years.
That was part of why I wondered if this was a way to keep people in Oxford who they thought were gonna leave in year 2.
No, they let them leave.
Okay, but well, I mean, obviously they let them. It's not, but whether or not
They
this
lock you in Rhodes House for the
whether
second
this
year.
was an incentive to stay, and then some people use it in year 3.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. That's I suspect that's very new, because I've not heard anybody mention it prior. But anyway, very interesting. Okay, we are almost at 3 o'clock, but I want to make sure that the folks on the call, not me, have a chance to ask any final questions.
I have a really quick question, but I guess also just wrapping up, I want to say thank you guys so much. I'm sure your lives are very, very busy. So thank you for coming to talk to us. And also, Irina, you probably don't remember at all, but like the first time like Rhodes entered my consciousness, I was like reading the emails about you for freshman year, I think, and you were in Kresge, and I was so nervous, and I like went up to introduce myself, and you were so lovely and so kind, and telling me all about it, and I've like never forgot that. And so thank you so much. But I'm curious, in your courses, if Oxford lets you take classes across different schools, so like the Blavatnik School or Information Policy, or maybe Irina for you, the law school, is there a lot of flexibility within the classes? And also, have you been able to get involved within different campus clubs and organizations? Is that something that's really encouraged?
For the classes, you can like essentially if the lecturer says you can go to the class, you can go. Like it's not, you have to just email and then they'll be like, yeah, you can come to the lectures. But like it just needs to work where like you're probably not missing your classes. Yeah, the classes you have. But like in general, you can unofficially, I'll say like it's encouraged to like email, but like you can also just drop in. Like as long as you can get in the building, you should be fine.
Yeah, I'll emphasize unofficially. Do not contact like the people in charge of the program because they will shoot you down like incredibly viciously. Um, I forgot the second bit of the question.
About like student organizations
Oh,
or
yes.
sort of like extracurricular involvement that Rhodes has either allowed you to do or that you guys have been able to pick up and get involved in.
Yeah, I started rowing here because I was like, what's the most British sport I can do? And that was rowing. It was probably actually polo, but I'm kind of scared of horses, so
Cricket is
not.
pretty big in the UK. Yeah. Very boring though. Rowing's more exciting.
Yeah. And I also am a fellow through the Oxford China Policy Lab. Yeah, Oxford China Policy Lab. And it's like a series of seminars with different experts and also like teaching kind of like skills. Um, and so like that's been really nice and kind of a way for me to build I guess confidence in my research because I wouldn't consider myself either naturally prone to or particularly talented at independent research. Um, so that's been nice. But I would say it's like incredibly easy to get involved. There's like lots of things to do.
Yeah. I mean, I'm quite involved in my student, like my common room. So like right now I'm the IT officer. Like what that means is like I control like the website for our college MCR. I handle mailing lists for people, which is quite important, like getting people information and stuff. I'm also like, I guess I'm running for like president in my college as well. So it's like, we're in the student politics game, really fun. But it's cool because you get to like meet lots of people. You get to see how like the colleges themselves are run in the background, which is very interesting. So, like doing things like the balls, like like balls in Oxford are like a very big thing. So like planning the balls, having big ideas for like how college should look if they're trying to redesign rooms and stuff. So it's quite interesting. I'm also in the salsa society, so I started going to classes. Fun, indeed. I'm trying to improve my skills.
Are there any characteristics, sorry to hop in again, that you guys feel have helped you grow the most, or you've noticed a lot of change from like 5 years ago, whether that's in your like academic work or personal life that you were sort of thinking like this would not be simply possible without doing this opportunity or being at Rhodes? I'm interested in how you guys sort of like reflect on like your own journeys.
I would say I think I got way more chill at Oxford. Like I don't know what like productivity demon possessed me during undergrad. But I've like been definitely taking like life slower. Um, and I find it's quite nice. Like I have a like more time for myself, more time for like relationships in my life, more time to reflect. Like I don't regret how I was in undergrad, but I think like there's an opposite side to the coin, which is quite nice. And also I feel like my academic work has gotten um I guess like deeper, intellectually deeper as a result. Um, and then I had something else, but I've forgotten. William?
I'd say I've definitely got more chill. Like I did my chilling during my master's. Honestly, people were asking how I was able to get into the PhD with the way I was enjoying my life. That's just degree. Because I was like doing all sorts of side quests, like going out, like too many things, and like just I went to like 4 balls. Like uh, when I was supposed to be doing my thesis, I was just like not working. I was working, but like okay, not really. So I took it as a time to really just chill and like know how to like work smarter in some ways, be more efficient when it comes to doing things. Um, yeah, so I guess like that's it. I'm like way more chill about stuff. But like now that I'm doing a PhD, it's a bit different because it's like you learn that like you just gotta like have moments of being really chill, and then have moments where you just like lock in quite a bit. So yeah, that's it. Like, but I'm appreciating being more chill now because in undergrad I was like on a treadmill and it was constantly on. So this is way more appreciated.
Thank you guys.
And I really appreciate you both going through that because as I can't remember whether I've had this conversation with you, Arena, but a conversation that I have a lot is folks saying, oh, well, I don't want more school after graduation. I'm exhausted after Northwestern, and trying to explain that the nature of academic and intellectual life at Oxford, but also, frankly, throughout European universities, is one that's giving you far more space for that internal development. It's not continuous assessment, and that has its frustrations. It is an adaptation, but it also is giving more space. And in fact, I was just having a conversation like that at a Res College lunch. So anyway, thank you for being on record that it's not just me spewing nonsense, but it is the repeated chorus of Northwestern students who study in the UK, Oxford, the UK, and then the EU, that it is a profoundly different rhythm and experience with very different benefits to it. Has deficits too, but it has very different benefits. So. Thank you both. I know we've kept you a little bit past the hour. Mia, thank you for being such an active interlocutor. I appreciate it. And I am sure the students who look at the video down the line will be grateful for your questions interspersed in here. So thank you guys. And yes, Arena, at some point you have to tell me if you've made your final decision.
Wait, we can just stay on this call after and I'll tell you.
Okay, all right.
About you on the next Northwestern email and remember. So have a good one. Bye.
All right, thanks, Mia. Thanks, William.
Of course, I'll see you around. Sorry,
Yeah.
and yes to Wednesday.
Okay, sounds good.
Cheers.
Okay.
You want to turn off the recording?
No, I nearly just ended the whole call, which would be a